Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm sitting here with my friend Sean Douglas. How are you?
I'm great. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. It's been a while. Well, we text, but it's been a while since we've actually physically seen each other.
It has been a long time. You look as young as the day I met you.
You look identical.
I don't.
I definitely look a little older.
I don't. 2 kids have aged me.
2 kids as well, yeah.
Yeah. Right. We're on the same path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what? I must ask you, because you did tell me a little bit, where's this piano from, a Schimmel? I actually have never seen one before.
My mom had this in our house.
Oh, beautiful.
Not when I was really little, but when I was probably a teenager, yeah.
So did you write on this when you were a teenager?
I did, yeah. I wrote probably some of those songs on the album too.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. It's been it's a nice piano. It's like doesn't sound as bright as Yamaha, and it's not kind of as dark as a Bosendorfer. And they're like, I'm not even it's too nice a piano for my piano playing ability.
You're too modest. If you're not a good piano player, then I'm
okay. But
you're a good piano.
But yeah, it's fun to write on. Yeah.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
How long ago did we meet?
When would we have been making that album? 2008? No, 9.
Yeah, 8 or 9, something like that.
Maybe 8. That's crazy.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think 8. Crazy. I can't even believe it. 10 years ago. More than 10 years ago.
So you had this band, The Hatch.
Yes.
But you were changing the name.
Yes, and then did we change the name? We changed the name
after the record was
finished. Yes, after the record, and then after we made it, and then we had released it as Burn Down the Mission.
Yeah.
I think that's how it was. Yeah, we had been The Hatch in college, and then we were trying to do that in New York for a little while, and then once we sort of we had this new crop of songs that we felt like were kind of a new caliber, a new sound, and a little more defined, which I think still was accurate. And when we started making it, we were like, well, this is going to be a new thing. We spent you've heard 6 hours of conversation about us being suggesting band name. Agreeing on a band name is a nightmarish process.
It is.
Nobody likes it.
I think unless a band becomes massively successful, all the names are bad.
Yeah, totally.
It's like if I said to you, even the Beatles, you'd be like, what a terrible name for a band.
Of course.
But
yeah, time crystallizes it, and then you're like, it makes sense.
If you didn't know the Red Hot Chili Peppers were from LA and this great dirty funk rock band, you'd think that they were a blues band,
That's right.
Covers blues band.
You'd think they were
the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Or some jam band that never quite made it or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the band makes the name.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, yeah, that was a fun time. It's crazy.
It was marvelous.
Remember when we were recording the album and Steve Perry was around and came in and hung out? And I feel like it was not long after. Wait, when would the final episodes of Sopranos have been?
Oh, it wasn't. It was just after.
It was shortly after, right?
No. I think it actually happened. It happened because he came in when we were making the record.
And he told the story about the whole sync thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was crazy. Yeah, because it was fresh and everyone had been talking about it. I remember people were I don't know if everyone didn't feel good about it, but a lot of people were up in arms. It didn't end how they thought it should end or whatever. Yeah. Now I think in hindsight, people go back and look at that as that was an awesome way to end it. Yeah. Now it's classic. Yeah, people's opinions change so much over time.
Well, definitely when we're sort of conditioned and we have certain expectations because you're so into it, and then when you come back, you have a whole different thing.
Totally.
I can't remember the sync thing that happened.
It was, they said, hey, we want to use it as the closing credits, and he said, or the closing scene, and he said, oh, cool. What happens? Because I would only approve it if I know what happens, and they were like, well, we can't tell you. And then he said, okay, then you can't have it. And then they said, well, what do you mean? It's this big moment. And he said, yeah, you can't have it. You need to tell me what happens. And I think I couldn't tell if it was he was really proprietary over well, I don't want it to be over some guy getting murdered or if it was a power or a control thing and be like, you're not going to tell me I can't. I couldn't tell. But
now you're reminding me of it. I feel like, because Steve is so unassuming. Mm-hmm. He would show up to the sessions in shorts and a t-shirt.
I couldn't believe
baseball cap on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here's Steve Perry. Yeah. Especially when you were doing vocals.
Yeah.
You were so nervous.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
But then I think the story was that then they were we have to lock picture, it's airing whatever in however many days, whatever. Yeah. And he was we have to lock picture tonight. And he was like, okay, I'm sorry. And then they go, fine. And then they say, here's what happens. He's in the diner, and blah, 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 and they describe it. And then he's like, okay, fine, you can use it. And then they just like...
Because it's probably quite anticlimactic once you find out.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
It just kind of fades to black and your song plays, essentially.
Yeah.
It wasn't that, but yeah.
Like,
it was pretty much...
Yeah, it cuts to black, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that was fun.
Steve came by a lot of that record.
Yeah, he did. He popped in a few times. We had lunch with him at Cantor's, and I was like, I couldn't believe it.
And then he's so unassuming. I think he was dressed in, he had black combat shorts on.
Yeah.
Like New Balance training shoes, running shoes, a black t-shirt and a black baseball cap.
Yeah.
And I think the whole time we were at Cantor's, I don't think one person recognized him.
No, nobody bothered him or said anything.
Here's the lead singer of Journey.
Yeah.
And we're just sitting there.
Yeah.
The whole time.
I feel like he made some sort of like self-deprecating comment about his voice and was just like, you know, I'm not that much of a singer or something like that. I couldn't tell if he was fucking with me. I thought it was so fun. I mean, it was, anyway, great guy.
Yeah.
That whole album process was so fun.
Yeah. Should have been a huge album.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it was so interesting. The sort of like, it was like when we made that record, we sent it out to whoever we knew in the music industry, and it was like, didn't hear anything back for a couple weeks, and thought, okay, nobody likes it. It's dead in the water. And then Jake said, hey, I found this, and I played it for a few people. Here are the responses. And then all of a sudden, like, it just started gaining momentum and gaining momentum. And then, well, you know how it is, like once, or you remember also that like once somebody's interested, the other people are like, oh, I think, you know what? Yeah, I love this. You know,
I mean, I thought we made the record that we wanted to make, which was Hall & Oates for the 21st century.
Totally. And I think that was the appeal. And I listened back to the other day. I was like, I still like this. This is great. Yeah.
I would give it a remix to make it a little bit more contemporary.
Sure.
Give somebody carte blanche to maybe, I wouldn't say EDM the heck out of it. I don't mean that, but just add some more synth elements, because we did do some great synth elements.
Yeah, and you could program it a bit more drum-wise, and certainly.
But the essentials are there, and the arrangements and the tempos and the vocals are amazing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about amazing, but you know, I tried.
I thought you did.
Thank you.
And it was a lot of fun. For me, I got to also really get into like guitars and stuff, and we did a lot of great guitar layering. And we worked really heavily with Jesse on making it all work.
Totally.
That was fun.
That was so fun to watch you really go to work on kind of layering like all the interlocking parts guitar-wise and stuff, because as not a guitar player, I mean, I'd done it plenty of times in arrangements, you know, with the band and demos and things like that, but to watch it really be done that precisely was like a big learning experience.
It's fun. You just don't get that. You don't get that anymore.
No.
Now,
no.
So speaking of which, I mean, the stuff you're working on now, you're pretty much in a room. What do you do? Do you bring in like a laptop with a small?
Usually not. Usually I kind of go, and for better or worse, so I kind of am nomadic. Like when people say, hey, like today, I don't even know where my session is. It's at some studio, and it's wherever the producers are, or where if the artist likes record plant or whatever, then you just go there and work there. Usually there's their situation. They have some type of MIDI keyboard, which I'll play, or I'll defer to them if they are kind of playing. Then I like to sort of be flexible. I think if I could hang my hat on any one thing, and as a songwriter, it would be that, like, something that separates me. If you want to sit here, like, I'll do sessions with singer-songwriters here at this piano, and we just write a thing. We do a voice note, and I'll do a demo after the fact. 50-50, just like that kind of thing. Or somebody's got some, urban track, and we'll just top line it over that, and that can be really fun too. And that's what keeps it fresh and interesting, because you just come at it from all these different angles. Some people have the same process and they just hit it again and again and again, which can work great. For me, it seems to be better kind of keeping it fresh. You have the capabilities to do it all as well. Yes. I produce a little bit, and so I kind of pride myself on being a top to bottom songwriter who can kind of, and I can build a track, although usually I'll, like, if I'm producing anything, I kind of, singer, more like live, organic sounding things, I'll produce all myself sometimes, but pop, more like rhythmic pop stuff, I'll kind of do it up to a certain thing and hand it off to somebody who's going to make it hit a little harder, Which is, so what's interesting, I remember when Phil was doing a ton of sessions at Harmony, tons of pop stuff going through, he told me that
50% of the time, people were listening to whatever was current on Spotify.
Yeah.
To like, well, what are we competing against?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Do you find that in sessions?
Yeah, and I'm even guilty of it, and I have to remind myself, like that. Obviously, it's a losing battle to, and I don't go into it with that intention, but it's a losing game to be like, what's hot right now? Let's chase that. Like inevitably, whenever doesn't matter how fast you get this thing out in 4 to 6 months, like it's already going to feel a little bit tired. So it would behoove you more to listen to things, from 20, 30, 60, however many years ago. But yeah, people, there's a lot of especially with New Music Friday, it's nearly impossible to keep up. It's fatiguing, actually, to keep up with all the new music. And it's kind of amazing and great. And also, it's just a tidal wave every week. And then, you get excited about what you get excited about. And then it's as if another wave comes up and washes the sand clean again. And you kind of almost forget about, maybe like 16-year-olds at home are like, no, don't feel that way. Maybe they say, no, that track from last week, I held on to that, and that's I'm now playing that on repeat. And hopefully that is the case.
Sure.
But to me, it feels like there's so much. There's almost too many options.
Right. I think just one of the discussions that happens with modern pop music is people are saying I suppose they're just saying it's very incestuous at the moment.
Yeah. You mean it starts to sound like
Yeah,
itself?
you can sort of go back like 5 or 10 years and sort of almost swap it around and go, what's changed? There's a lot of sort of like, incestuousness. I mean, not that wasn't what happened anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always been sort of the path. When the Beatles got signed from Liverpool, so did every band from Liverpool.
Right, of course.
When Nirvana got big.
Every band in Seattle.
Yeah. I mean, so we do know that that's sort of the way the industry works.
Yeah.
So I suppose for me, what is it that you find that keeps you fresh?
This sounds like a fake answer, but I find that reading helps a lot, especially lyrically. Like it kind of puts a whole lexicon into your head that isn't in there from day-to-day conversation, and kind of the rhythms of words. I find titles often are starting points for me, and sometimes it's not just the word or the significance of a word, but it can be the sort of way it rolls off the tongue, and they like I hear. And I don't know if everybody does. Some people do, and some people don't. But there are certain phrases where, like, that are particularly sort of musical or rhythmic, or they've got a certain percussive element to them.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, cool. That's got I hear there's a certain pocket that has. So that can kind of keep it fresh, or just I mean, I'm certainly not above listening to favorite records and being like, oh yeah, nobody's doing something like this, or I haven't heard something like this in a little while.
Do you find it was a great quote? Keith Richards, and I also saw Steven Tyler do this, where they're scatting a melody and they find vowel and consonant sounds, and then they actually fit the lyrics to the vowel and consonant sounds.
Yep, that happens a lot, particularly in slightly more like urban leaning or rhythmic pop sessions, where it's so much of it is like, hey, we've got an instrumental vibe, go in the booth and just they throw the auto-tune to 9 and you go and try a bunch of stuff, and oftentimes, if you make a little comp of like, here are the favorite ideas. This is kind of like the Stargate Estradine approach that they kind of pioneered. I think. Well, I think Mick obviously kind of pioneered that part of it. But like you listen back, and then there's a certain thing. It's either that's because it's the right vowel to be singing, or because you get attached to it because you hear it over and over again. People start to write to like, oh, that sounds like you're saying this, and you kind of write around, and it can be a good way to get at it. I mean, anything that gives you like a foothold into something, or like a little opening, if that's the trick that gets it going, then like great, Yeah.
Absolutely. I wrote a couple of years ago with Paul Meany, and I remember that was something that happened. It's like he came back with some really amazing lyrical ideas, but we lost a little bit of that kind of element of particularly consonant sounds.
Yeah.
And once we returned to that, even with the same lyric and just tweaking it to fit around that, it definitely kept that bounce going.
That's one of the best things about co-writing to me is people observe you in a way that you can't observe yourself. So I'll be kind of at the piano, like humming some melody, trying something, and someone will say, did you say this? And I'll say, no, I don't have any idea what I said. And they said, it sounded like you said that. That's a cool phrase. And then you go, oh yeah, great. Because, every now and again I sit down just to remind myself that I can write a song by myself, because I almost never do now. It's always me and one or two other people. and it's great and it's nice to write a solitary song, but you find yourself almost saying like, is that good? Or what does that sound like? And looking for a sounding board. And it's, to be back in a vacuum like that is weird.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because when we were together, you were pretty much the sole songwriter on the record. So let's think about this. So I suppose we did that record, lots of A&R guys heard about it. The guy that was helping represent you was putting it all around. Yeah. I'm sure lots of publishers went, oh, this guy's a really great songwriter. How did it...
that whole thing happened, and when we were showcasing for all over the place, and which was fun, and that Rick Rubin showcase, that was crazy.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the Rick Rubin showcase.
That was, they were like, I can't remember who different characters and labels would come in at different times into the picture of like who was kind of poking around and interested in, but I can't remember who the players were at that point, but it was like one or two major, like whatever, Island and something. Rick Rubin's label, American, which was by far the smallest of the labels, but we thought it was just like that was the coolest thing ever, that Rick Rubin would take any interest. I remember it took so long for them to set up where it would be, when it would be, and they said, be ready, stay ready. And like we couldn't leave town, we couldn't do anything. And then all of a sudden they go, we want to do it tomorrow in Malibu, because that's where Rick lives. And then we said, okay. And they said, we're going to do it at Pepperdine. I was like, okay, in the theater. Okay, and then we get there. The theater is like I don't know.
Huge.
It's like an 8,000 person theater. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
And they have us set up all our rental gear and stuff, and then they go, okay, you ready? And we're still setting something up, and we go, no, we're not ready. And they go, Rick's here in 5 seconds. We're turning out the lights, and we go, no, hold on. And then we were ready enough, I guess. And then all of a sudden, like, lights go down. And then up at the very top row, backlit in the hallway, the only lights were in from the hallway. And this is when he was still big. So this like rotund silhouette with the iconic beard outlined with like the kind of illuminated comes, and we were kind of like this down on the stage. And then he sits in the very last row of, you were there, you remember. He sits in the very last row of the place, and the guys, his two A&R guys up front go, they're like, go, and we go, okay. Played our songs, went fine, I think.
It was a good showcase.
Yeah.
In a very large, empty, echoey room.
There were 4 people in the entire place. 3 down in the front row, and then him in the very last row. And then we finished our thing, and he got up, and I remember he clapped like this, he went, yay, like that, in a nice way. And then he said, thank you very much, out the tunnel, never a handshake, never. I mean, I don't even mean that like he was a jerk. It was just like mythological. Yeah, it was crazy, and
mythological.
And at the time, I was like, okay, I think like if he was really excited and wanted to sign us, he probably would have reacted differently or like come down and talk to us. So that's not good. But I remember clocking it and just saying, oh, that's a good story. Like
This is a good story.
I'll remember that. This guy's a legend, and it grows larger every day. So
because Austin was living in the drummer. Was living in New York, and it was like, oh, I have to go back to New York. Like, no, you can't leave. Any minute now, Rick is going to call.
Make the call. Showcase. That's what it was like, and I forgot about the fire drill element of it. But it was crazy. And so that whole thing happened, and then. I guess, I don't know, as it got to a certain point, the deals that were coming around were like, they were kind of development deals, and they didn't look like anything that anyone would really want to sign or would become something real. And now in hindsight, seeing some of these deals from the other side, you're sort of like, oh yeah, that's a tough situation. Yeah. So Jake, as we were kind of waiting to see what was happening, was like, hey, do you want to try some of these writing sessions? And I said, sure. And it's not like I didn't know that was a career. I guess I objectively knew that it was, but I had never really thought about it. And so he set me up on like 2 weeks of blind date, run around LA, all over the place, co-writes. And after that, I was like, there's something about it that clicked, even though none of those really became big songs or anything. There was something that clicked where I was like, oh, this feels more like me. Like the being a frontman of a band was something I really wanted to do and had fun doing, but there was something about it that was always like a lot of work, like not the type of work that hard work. It was like trying to fit a round peg in a square hole or something.
Well, plus you come alive in a studio.
Yes, that's where I really. And when we were making it,
you and I was just sitting here, keyboard, guitar. That was
totally. And I'd be like sending you tracks and things like that. yeah, and that really was my happy place. And I was like, well, I get to do this every day. And also, I think one of the things was, I mean, we kind of called it down for that album to like the songs that basically went together. But we didn't kind of hone a very, I mean, the band, didn't hone a very particular sound, like, oh, these guys sound like this. So this was like allowed me to do a girl pop record on Monday and a, urban sounding thing on Wednesday and a kind of country thing on Friday. And like, that all worked for me was amazing. I was like, okay. So I just ran with that for a year until I had a publishing deal that made sense. And
great.
Yeah, it has been great.
And what was the okay? This is the one of those questions that somebody else would ask. What was the big break? What was the first hit?
Yeah, the first. So I got a single with this girl, Katie Groves, and that was not a hit, but it was enough to sort of like help put me in an okay position for my publishing deal. And then it was probably another 9 months, and I wrote this song called Heart Attack that became a Demi Lovato hit. And that kind of set things, and once you have a hit, doors open, and you're writing with better people, and people hear your songs and with a different sort of filter, I think. And it changed the whole thing.
No, I remember people go, "Hey, do you know Sean wrote this song?"
Yeah, you're like, yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, I've heard of him. I recognize him.
Yeah, I spent 18-hour days in the studio with him.
Yeah, and then there was Jason Derulo, wasn't there?
Yeah, so there was Heart Attack opened things up, and then I had a Jason Derulo song, Talk Dirty, that became huge. And
I remember that was pervasive everywhere I went.
It was one of those inescapable. Like, I realized the greatest compliment you can get is when somebody says, "I'm so sick of your fucking song," and I'm just like, "Yeah, dude, that's when you know you've really got one." That's the greatest compliment anyone can give you.
I remember being a kid and somebody asked Sting, "When did you know you'd made it?" And he said when he was staying at a hotel, probably on tour, and the guy washing the windows went doom doom doom.
Yeah.
Doom doom doom.
That's
he was like,
phenomenal.
"That's it. I know I made it."
Yeah. Oh my God. That's great.
Yours is the modern version, I suppose.
Yeah. No, it is the greatest. But the hearing your song on the radio is like the most potent like drug high or like any type of thrill that I can ever, and still doesn't really get old.
I remember the first thing I produced that I heard on the radio was really, really exciting. But I think there's something about either being the artist or the writer, which I think is the next level.
I don't know. The production is kind of the just on the same level.
But I feel like if you're producing well, you're enhancing the artist.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
It's like I do know some producer friends of mine that are, really get a massive kick out of it, and I get a kick out of it. But it's hard not to be. I wish I'd.
Yeah. Oh yeah. God. Yeah. There's something about, I think, especially as someone who used to perform and was always anxious about it, and you have good shows, you have bad shows, you have whatever. There was something about once the record is done and it's just like sealed up in a bow, and no one can ever. I mean, there might be things that you're not completely happy with, but assuming you're reasonably happy with it as a writer, you're like, this can never go wrong. Like when it's playing on the radio, like it sounds like it sounds, and it sounds like if it's a hit, then it sounds even more like a hit. Yeah.
Totally.
That's fun.
What are you working on at the moment?
I've been doing a bunch of stuff with Thomas Rhett, who is this country artist who I work with a lot, that was a cool new world that I got to step into a couple of years later, was working with him because he wanted to try some writing with some pop, more rhythmic leaning artists, and I had expressed interest in working with country artists. And that's been an awesome relationship. He's like a great dude and a great writer. And so that was 3 albums ago for him now, and I've now worked on the 2 subsequent ones, and I think maybe I have his next single coming out, but he just kind of writes continuously.
Wonderful. Writer's right.
Yeah, writer's right, and he really does. And those Nashville guys, it's been fun to have. That's been sort of my entree into the Nashville world, where I'm going tomorrow.
You flying to Nashville tomorrow?
Flying to Nashville tomorrow. They're having a #1 party for this song of the Thomas Rhett song that I wrote.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for this song called 16. So, but the first big one I wrote with him was Die Happy Man, which was a really great breakthrough. And it was nice to write a song. As much as like Talk Dirty is fun, I like all those records, and I would never I would never shy away from them, but it was nice to write something that was like a proper love song with some real emotional singer-songwriters
Which is where you come from.
Yes, exactly, where I come from. And
yeah.
It's funny, you get thrown into these things, you're writing booty records and all that stuff, which has its place and is awesome, but it was cool to round it out like that.
But you come from the sort of the artist side, although, it's important to remember that, you were sending me tracks of like full ideas and maybe rearranged. Maybe we muted because you were doing tons and tons of ideas. But the point is you had tons and tons of ideas.
I did, yeah.
So you came from that place where, mixed in with the fact that you can actually sit down and play a song and sing it.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people are coming up, with the technology and then using the technology to build tracks. And there's validity in both areas. But you have you're in a great place because you understand both worlds.
Yeah, thank you. And I pride myself on that. And I hope it insulates me a little bit from the sort of the trends and fickleness of the business and things come in and out of vogue. And, most writers, you see them kind of have a hot streak, and then that kind of that's their 5 years, and it seems to be so far doing that, because you can always sit down and write a song, and hopefully good songs will always have a place in different forms and different outfits, dressed up, but I think good songs will always kind of live on. So yeah, that's been fun. What else am I working on? I had a couple on Lizzo's album, which was she's phenomenal and great to work with, and I had one on Louis Capaldi's new record, and he's a stellar singer and good guy.
Are you going to work with Rhett now? Is that what you're going to do after this?
Today is just a pitch session with some writers, and then at the end of the Friday, I'm writing with Demi Lovato, and I've kept up a good writing relationship. I did Sorry Not Sorry for her, which was nice to come back and have. It's fun to have multiple hits with the same person kind of at different points in their career.
Yep.
It's just, I don't know, cool to be involved in the evolving story.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
She seems very sweet.
She's super sweet, and her voice is crazy. Like in person, it's just bananas. We could just blow the doors open.
If you're traveling to a session just to work with a singer on their own, what would you take with you?
If I'm going, honestly, I'll bring a laptop, maybe a little MIDI controller if I think I'm going to need it, or if I think, depending on what studio you're going to. Although it's so funny how some of the, this is not a dig against the commercial studios, because everyone who works there are so lovely and helpful, but like sometimes they'll book, but you go
like a big expensive commercial
you're being this
studio.
big expensive commercial studio, and it's got the giant Neve board, and that costs more than my house, and you kind of go, okay, hey, could we get like a MIDI controller? And they're like, yeah, hold on. And they have to like go find some like little dinky MIDI controller. Yeah. They've got all the gear. They've got all the analog gear you could ever want, but it doesn't serve you for some pop writing session. And then they're like, yeah, that's like a $30 rental for the, is the label okay with that? I'm like, yeah, I hope so. Sure, please.
They just spent $1,500 on a room.
Yeah, so they should be okay with the plus 30. But the point is, I go pretty light, because if it's just me and the artist, we're usually just like miking up a piano and just doing something really basic. If I'm writing with like Matt Nathanson, we just wrote on this piano, and we went into, or Gavin DeGraw, we'd be at Westlake, and we just sit at a piano and do a proper singer-songwriter thing, which is probably not the norm for what I usually do, but it's really fun to do, because that was the stuff that I came up doing, liking and writing myself.
The reason why we do this in the first place.
Exactly. But then other times, if you're going to somebody's place and they've got, their full rig and they're using whatever, Pro Tools is probably the most common, but now a lot of the younger guys you're seeing, like Ableton and FL Studio, and the Fruity Loops guys are always, half the time, don't even have a MIDI controller, and they're just literally just typing out full kind of sick keyboard parts on their laptop keyboard, and it's insane. It's amazing to me. But yeah, anyway, that's the fun of actually what I get to do, is that like every day is a different combination of people, and you get to kind of get a window into, and I actually talked to some of my producer friends would be like, well, what is so-and-so, what are these other people doing? Because they're stationary, they're stuck in their rig, in their world, and I kind of get a peek into, and everybody's doing a different thing. Some guys are just like, their laptop on the couch and they're programming some crazy thing, and some guys are in the full, they've got the board and they've got the big monitors, and it's interesting.
Yeah, you got everything from laptop to Junkie XL.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Who has like every keyboard ever in the history of keyboards.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys like that. Yeah. It's fun. It's cool.
Yeah,
it's like every day's a little surprise. It's interesting because people write, a lot of the time people write in the booth, especially in more like kind of urban sessions, and you'll have just a proper vocal booth, and it'll be, an 87, and like the SM7 is the mic that is getting passed around in the room. It's the like, it's bomb proof.
Yeah. It's the utilitarian mic that can do anything.
But it's on a lot of voices, some voices it sounds incredible, and on a lot of voices it sounds very good, And I think producers always like to say, whatever record they had that was a big hit, and we'll be like, what that was on this,
Sure.
I can't remember what the thing is like. There are a bunch of famous songs where they're famously on that mic that like someone's laying on a couch just kind of casually.
Yeah, there's Chrissy Hind, I think was a 57 or 58.
Right.
For Stand By You.
Right.
Everybody
Bono was like famously a 58 or something like that, right? Like
Paul Rogers, Mick Jagger,
with the monitors blaring in his direction.
Zach De La Rocha for the first Rage Against the Machine record had never sung outside a rehearsal room.
Oh my God.
So he hated using headphones. I'm going to interview Garth soon, so I'll ask him exactly the story. So this is paraphrased. Sorry if I mess it up, Garth. But the folklore is because he'd never sung like that, he just had to have like a 58, handhold it, and perform a show.
That's awesome.
So, but it was apparently very difficult to, they flipped the phase of the monitors and got rid of some of it. But
but
it is what it is. The performance is more important than the...
Oftentimes, I think so.
I mean, you probably have many records where the demo vocals become the vocal.
Yeah, all the time. Demi, Sorry Not Sorry, that was just like the day of vocal, and she was just crushed it, and what more is there to do? Or
pieces of it get used.
Or things
couldn't beat the verse, so they keep the verse.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
That day they hit the high note in the chorus, so you keep it. Yeah,
totally. And people are having to like, the vocal chain's not exactly the same, but they, kind of massage it so it works. And it's interesting.
Which is another thing, isn't it? Literally in mixing, it's insane what you can do. Like, here was the $50 mic, here's the $15,000 mic.
Yeah.
And you can sort of massage it. And which one did you say was the expensive one again?
Yeah, they fooled me on. There's this artist who's they had a deadline on the song they had to release soon, and she had cut most of it on whatever the vocal chain was that the producer had. I wasn't there, and then she had to cut something from the road because she wanted to change a line, and I couldn't tell where he punched her in and where he had left the old one. So it was pretty good.
I can believe it.
Yeah,
and I think it was after I worked with the Frame when I was working with you. Chris Allen. It was about the same time I was doing Chris Allen. And when Joe King, who co-wrote the song, he sung all the backgrounds into the mic of the laptop with a pair of headphones on.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And we went to try and beat it, and it was all grainy sounding. And we were recording all the parts, and we were trying to EQ it, and we're like, let's just use it. So he sent it to us. And in the background you had, the flight arriving, and he did it in an airport lounge.
Oh, no way, really? Yeah. That's awesome.
Not out in the main departure, because the lounge is a lot quieter, as you know. But still, the idea of singing a backgrounund in an airport lounge is pretty awesome.
That's really awesome. So you'll be in a studio and you've got some grand piano and some all this gear, and guys are setting up the voice note app on their iPhone, because there's something about that kind of like hyper compressed thing that is very cool. And then somebody told me the other day that they were doing stereo voice note, like on both sides of the piano.
Oh wow!
Which I don't even know if they were doing that to entertain themselves or if that actually sounds better. But it does give a sort of weird, sort of like kind of
I remember with the old boomboxes, when you do, just a boombox or a Sony Walkman back in the days of tape in a rehearsal room.
Really?
The band would just like be total distortion. Right. But when just the drums played, it could be like.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Super explosive.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we used to do run. I remember not actually that long ago when we used to have the big live room. I would take a Walkman and then come out the mini jack through a DI box and just record it on record.
Oh, that's right.
As a mono room mic.
That's great.
Because it just had its own distortion that nobody else could do. Nothing else could do.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's so cool. Writing process is a different thing every day, and like today is a pitch session, so it's just me and a couple writer friends and these producers who are really good, who did John Bellion's recent record, and we'll just go in and kind of talk about who's So sometimes you talk about who's looking and sometimes you don't, but if there are a couple things that have maybe deadlines that are closing soon, you might say, you know, who needs a song? So-and-so. And you might tailor an idea toward that person, or you might not. It's usually a better idea not to, honestly.
Is there still pitch sheets going around?
Yeah, but they're mostly ignored. I mean, they're just never as up to date as whatever email someone just got or text someone just got about, you know, who needs something urgently. So somebody will say, like, Selena's album is closing soon, so let's try something for that, and you'll do that. And so it'll start with, you know, someone will have a lyric idea, or someone will say, hey, I was playing this little piano figure, or the other day I was in a session and the producer had just the beginning of a thing, a little guitar loop and a basic kind of drum track, and we're like, that's cool. And we just started vibing over that and right on the SM7 in the room, and yeah, and then you just take off running from there. So sometimes it's just a little melodic thing, and you try and fit a lyric to it after the fact.
Great.
Yeah, that's my favorite part, is that you get to just come at it all different ways.
Yeah, I think people ask me about songwriting all the time and say, how do you write a song? How do you do this? And I'm always like, you know, sometimes the singer comes in with a fully fleshed out idea that you end up maybe keeping most of it, some of it, whatever. And then there's other times they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, do you find you're getting into the sort of psychology of like, what do you want to talk about?
Yes.
Find out what's going on in their life.
Yeah, totally. And you kind of gauge how much each, in an artist co-write, how much they want to do that. And sometimes they want to do it a lot. And they come in and go, here's what's going on with me, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, they just spill all this stuff. And those can be some of the best. I had this one artist who they had us sign NDAs before we went into the session. I was kind of rolling my eyes like, this is like a little precious. And, you know, what do they think it's such a big deal that I'm going to tell them what, you know, orange juice they were drinking or something. And then it very clearly became apparent why we signed these, because she just spills her guts immediately and says, here's what's going on.
He or she, he means.
Yeah, he or she. Yeah. They spill their guts about like, okay, and I'm in this hotel and this person's calling me, but I really like this person, you know, whatever the drama of it was. And I'm like, yeah, the NDA was a good idea, but that's so good. And they just send out all this stuff and these really detailed things, and you can go, you kind of wait for the sort of like hooky idea in there and say, that's great. Or like that word that you just used is really like interesting, or I hadn't thought of a song about that yet, or it'll remind you of, oh, that's funny you said that, because I have this little like tiny like fragment of an idea that is, and the title is this, or it kind of feels like that, and then you kind of, by the end of the day, you have this brand new thing that didn't exist before, and it's cool.
So this is interesting. I would say the number one question I get asked, and you probably get asked this, you know, from people that are maybe a little bit more outside of the industry. I get asked this all the time. How can I get my song to X, Y, or Z artist?
Right.
I always respond with this. Really, almost impossible. I'm like, unless you're in a room.
Yeah.
You know, and also the other thing I say, and please elaborate on this, is like, I say to them, is it a bona fide number one smash hit? And they're like, I don't know about that, but it'd be good for the album. And I'm like, they've got album tracks coming out their ears. I mean,
yes.
I'm sure you get those kind of questions as well.
Yeah, I think, both parts of that are interesting. The first part, yes, it really is nearly impossible. Although, I think access is so huge. It's such a huge component of these things. And it's certainly, in my career, I've experienced the difference in, I think I've become a better songwriter over time, but at the same time, you were getting more access. Every time you have a new song that hits, people, that it reinforces the idea that you can deliver a hit. And so you get in all these rooms that you wouldn't have gotten in before, obviously. And so it becomes self-perpetuating. So access is a huge thing. Although I think that sometimes artists are getting better about, like, people are DMing them songs on Instagram, and probably largely none of that gets, especially the bigger the artist, they get so much stuff and they're probably not opening most of that. But producer friends of mine, some of them are really good about, guys will say, like, I have a friend, Ian Kirkpatrick, who's a great producer. He produced New Rules for Dua Lipa and all these things. And producers send him stuff and say, what do you think about this, and that? And he gets back to them and says what he thinks about it. And sometimes he's like, it's not that dope. Or like, I think your mix is a little flat or whatever he's saying. And I think if he's doing that, then maybe, artists would be less open to that, but
Sure.
There's something about the interaction that is getting a little bit more open, I guess.
Yeah.
Technology is democratizing everything. Certainly for the bedroom producer, they can make records that, a kid with limited resources never could have made 10 years before. So I think to some level that carries over to personal access. But if you're not in the room and if you don't have their manager's ear or their label's ear, it's an uphill
and publishers
slog and publishers. The whole thing. So
I think the other thing as well that's you've also got to be careful because artists are very reluctant to listen to unsolicited stuff because that's potential lawsuits.
Yeah,
I've heard that from a few people. I remember making a particular record and people knew that I was making this record, so they were sending me all these songs. Oh, they would really like this, they would really like that, and I'm like, I'm not even. If I play this, I'm putting myself in a position where, you come back and say, oh, there's a melody line and I sent it to you and you heard it, and it's just like,
That's true, and that sucks, especially now. I mean, the climate in the post-blurred lines ruling era that we're in right now, every session I'm in there's a conversation about, hold on, I have to get on the phone with this musicologist because the song that we're coming out with, the estate of this and this and that, and they're asking for 100% of the song. Crazy, crazy stuff. And I think that, look, nobody should be stealing copyrights or melodies, but it's gotten out of control now.
I'm sure you'll agree with this. Obviously, the most famous case and the one that's the landmark case is George Harrison with My Sweet Lord. And what they were able to do to win the case was to prove access.
Right.
And in most, and I'm sure everybody can fight about my opinion on this, but in most cases, for years and years and years, this didn't happen because you couldn't prove access, and therefore it was just coincidence.
Yeah.
If you went, that's the first line of your song.
Right.
Great. Nowadays, if Demi had a song that went and then you wrote another song with somebody else with they would say he heard both or he was involved in it and blah, blah, blah.
Totally.
In the days of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and probably most of the 90s, the internet was still, in the 90s, was still like a little baby thing.
Yeah.
Now, you put it up on SoundCloud, it's up on Spotify. They'll say, you heard my song.
That's out there, yeah, right.
Because it's internationally released on Spotify. But only 15 people heard it. But Sean heard it.
Yes, yes, I know, it's crazy.
So it's totally changed it because what used to be coincidence now cannot be proved. It cannot be disproved.
You can make a plausible case that you somehow heard this,
Yeah, because I had a friend in England that, I won't say who the band was, but was able to sue a band because they were signed to the same label. And this band took a huge portion of their song and reused it. Their single never came out. The other band's single came out, had a semi-hit with it. They were able to sue because they were like, you had our EP. We were at the same label. We talked, you heard the song. And they did actually steal the thing, but they probably thought they could get away with it because it was never released.
Right. Oh, do I know the one that you're talking about?
Probably, but I'm not going to.
No. That's a good one, though.
If you're thinking of the other one.
Yeah.
That was from a tour.
Oh, yeah.
He was playing
it backstage, and he was like, that's cool. What is that?
Yeah, and he gave him a cassette of it.
Oh.
I really like that song. Do you have a cassette of it? Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that was another one. Yeah.
It's funny.
The music business.
Yeah. Crystal clear waters.
Crystal waters. But yeah, so it's the access thing.
It's hard. And then to your point about is it a number one smash? Are you confident of that? It's funny how people, and I even in my daily life now pitching songs, you get all kind of hot on an idea and you go, people have to hear this. And then when sometimes you play it in the room for someone, all of a sudden you kind of like, you hear it differently. And you hear all the little parts. And it's hard to tell which part of that is being more honest with yourself or which is insecurity. I think it's kind of a cocktail of both. But all of a sudden you hear like, is that pre-chorus boring? Is there too much space, when you're waiting for the chorus to come in? But often when it comes down to it, people go, well, I think there's all this hedging. But it's a nice feeling when you have something that you go, here you go. I defy you to listen to this and not think it's a hit. And look, it's all subjective, and people have proven that, and people have slept on things that later became giant hits. So everyone is capable of being wrong,
Absolutely, yeah. And the time, the climate.
Yeah, totally. So much of it is timing and artist and production.
I interviewed Roger Joseph Manning, but recently, and when Jellyfish were out in the early 90s, I just thought those two records were the best records ever made. And there's still, amongst us, music community, we still consider those to be two of the greatest albums of the 90s.
Yeah.
But they sold 1/100th of what they should have sold.
Right.
They sold tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Maybe low hundreds of thousands. But, you go back and, King is Half Undressed or Bedspring. Some of those songs are so well written. And amazing musicians. All have done massively well since.
On their own,
On their own.
Yeah.
It's, there's lots of factors.
Yes, there are. And that's what's crazy about it. You watch, actually, like the road for Heart Attack, my first hit, becoming a hit was so long and winding that it was once it finally came out and was a hit, it was almost as hard. It was thrilling and great and changed my life, but it was scary because you were like, this is what has to happen? Like, we wrote it with one artist. She didn't want to release it. She got dropped. Another artist cut it. She got dropped from her label. A third artist cut it, and I don't know, it's out on a shelf. Then all of a sudden, Demi cut it, and it came out and was a single. And this took place over the period of 12, 18 months, something like that.
Wow.
And then I was the last one to even find out that it was had life in it again. And then they're like, it's coming out next month. So, and then you go, how could you keep doing this reliably as a career? And they still happen that way sometimes with these crazy up and down roundabout. So-and-so happened to play for so-and-so as they were walking down this hallway or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's fast track to do this thing.
I wonder what those artists that got dropped must feel. They probably were like, if I'd been allowed to have this cut.
The frustration, everybody kind of complains about their lot in things, producers complain about all the ridiculous notes from people who don't know anything, and writers complain about, sometimes the lack of, sometimes you give a song over and you don't have enough control over the end product and it doesn't come out sounding as good as it could, whatever, all these things. But man, artists are in a tough position too, especially a proper pop artist who I think people, I have a lot of respect for people who, even ones who don't write their own songs, who don't have to pretend to either. Or they say, I write some of these songs and some of them I don't, because I'm an artist and I have a killer voice and I sing and dance. And
let's not forget a little guy called Elvis.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that,
people get very down on modern anything, any kind of thing. And I think it's all of the generations. When you were a kid, you probably heard it. When you were a teenager, as you get older. When I was a teenager, I heard people it's hindsight.
Yeah.
Pop singers get a really hard time, and when you talk about people like Demi who can sing,
oh my God,
circles around anybody,
totally,
they would have been a massive star in 1950, 60, 70, 80, and 90. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and she's happens to be a really good writer too. But I think,
not to take away from that.
No,
I just
not
mean
at all.
A voice as good as that. And you have to have it to have any kind of longevity.
Yeah,
which is another thing I think. Yes, I agree. Sometimes something comes on the radio, and I'm like, I can tell how massively auto-tuned and how inauthentic it is. But it worked because it was a great song and it's a hit.
Sure.
But, there's no career in there. There never is.
It's hard. Oh, yeah, that's right.
To have a career as a pop artist is really difficult.
Totally. And you're totally at the mercy of the sort of, the
next hit.
The next hit and the winds of change. Yeah, exactly. You're not, you can't necessarily just make it materialize, and you can't control your label's interest or the interest of the public, and it's just, I think, scary, which I think is what lead, when people talk about certain artists who maybe are perceived as acting in a jerky way or whatever, or having an ego. I think a lot of that is look, either some fear or some real urgency that they're like, dude, I gotta be in charge of my own destiny here, where I can be. Nobody's lot in the music industry is an easy one, and
there's no certainty.
Yeah,
you can
up to the executive level, I think. Still,
a singer can become an actor and become a really famous actor, but it doesn't mean they can always go back to singing and be successful.
Totally.
I think that there's a lot of that. And actors can sing, but it doesn't. You know what I mean? You can't.
Yeah.
I think, especially now, I think that fame was maybe easier in the past in a pre-internet world to sort of maintain. Maybe. I don't want to be that guy who speaks in total absolutes, but I feel like, because it was always reinforced by popular culture, at least the way the media was presenting it. But now, now everything's so immediate.
It's so immediate, and it's also we don't have the monoculture that we used to have, that like once you were sort of on the Pepsi commercials and the everything, like you'd have to do some damage to slow that train down, whereas now everything is so niche and everyone has their own which is mostly, I think, good.
That's great, yeah.
It's great because people can find their communities, and you don't need, especially if you own your own stuff, you don't need billions of listeners. Sure. You have you're a couple million, and that's awesome. But it makes it harder to like...
Probably even less. I mean, for some genres like metal and stuff like that, they have maybe 200,000 followers.
You've got your dedicated few and you're good.
Yeah, they're buying T-shirts. They're going to see your band play. I mean, your guarantees are in the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
I know bands that are making a couple $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Offer a couple of 100,000 people that absolutely worship.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah. It's shifting, and I think everybody's trying to figure out how to stay afloat in it. And I think we're entering, hopefully, a kind of, at least at the bare minimum, interesting, but I think a good period for music. So
I feel like with you, one of your secrets are, number one, obviously very talented.
Thanks.
I mean, no, but I sort of like talking to you now and seeing how your career's developed since we worked together. We did work together a couple of times since, but since we worked together extensively, is that I think it's your ability to interact with people. Also, humility, the fact that, I know you can produce really well. I know you can build tracks really well. And I'm sure if you spent a few extra hours a day, you could be super hip and cool and get all whatever the new riser is on the track, or whatever the drop's supposed to be.
That's what's holding me back.
Yeah.
my lasers and impacts. Yeah.
But I also think one of the things, and I've struggled with this my whole life. It's like I always have a hard time in the label meetings. I always have a hard time in that. It's really, really tough when somebody who's been in the music industry for approximately 3 weeks is telling you that the song you wrote is like, I don't think, and you just have to be,
Yeah.
And you're like grinning and bearing. I would say you're really good at all of that. Your ability to navigate, but also the fact that you have a wealth of talent and you're able to just go, well, this is the piece of what they need from me, and to assimilate in the right way.
Yes.
I think is a massive skill.
Thanks. Yeah, that's one that I'm constantly kind of trying to hone, because it's, you have to stay flexible and kind of figure out like, oh, how do I fit into this person's story right now, and kind of
and not threaten them. So I think part of the problem I would have, and I've heard this about a couple of instrumental, I won't talk about me, but like guys or girls that play instruments, is one of their failings can be, and it's a good lesson, is when they're like always pulling the guitar away or going up to the mic and re-singing it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, maybe that person is more talented than the guitar player, the bass player, the drummer, or whatever. But that's not our role. No. Our role is to uplift people, to empower them, not to humiliate them.
Yeah, 100%, and to kind of put them in the best light where they can be, their best selves. And
especially when you're working with somebody potentially teens or early 20s, the beginning of their career.
Totally. And that's right. And I think recalling what it's like to be in your teens and 20s is like, every day is like, who am I? What am I doing? And when you go in and write a song, especially when you're going to write a song that then you're going to go hustle around the world on various TV shows and stages, you really want to channel that, here's who I am into that song. And it's key for me to keep remembering that, because I feel attached to things that I write, but I'm going in like, let's write a song today, and I'm going to write it. We're writing it for this, but the next day will be a different song, and I have to keep at front of mind the fact that this could be a really important song for this person that could define this next little chapter of their thing. Hopefully, God willing, it would.
Yeah, and if they have to change that lyric that you love, if they have to change it for them to fall in love with it.
Yes.
You just
the best thing. Yeah, that's the best thing about writing day in, day out is, and you kind of guard against burnout, and you take a day off here or there where you can. But your preciousness goes out the window. Mine has been, whittled down to very little. Unless somebody's really infringing on something like, no, this is really important, or no, that's offensive. I would never want to say something like that. But generally you kind of go, okay, well, it's not, and not that you have to be deferential to a fault. Sometimes their idea is really not right, or you need to really like kind of find a compromise. But just to go, yeah, it doesn't have to be exactly my way. That's why we're here, just to come together and find compromise. I think
almost the word, I know you weren't saying this, but almost the word compromise is really not applicable, is it? It's almost you want to just kind of guide them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I think especially with recording vocals.
Yeah.
I know this seems to be, that's like the songwriting and everything, like that's the freaking light straight on the singer, because...
Sorry, Moses.
Oh no, this is good. I think...
Moses, you want to do the rest of the interview? Yeah.
I wonder, because one of the things I talk about when I'm recording vocals, and I don't know if you remember when we were doing vocals, is like one of the things is distraction, is actually sometimes to get out of the moment. Because, when we talked about Steve Perry being in the studio with us, I mean, you basically said to me, Warren, could you ask Steve Perry to leave?
Yeah.
It's really freaky.
I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it's an example of the pressure of recording a vocal.
Yeah.
So I've learned through years that distraction sometimes is the best thing. Just you and I sitting here joking about, I don't know, whatever we want to joke about, and then record a vocal and keep that level of entertainment and fun going while you're singing.
Yeah. Actually
takes you out of your head. And suddenly everything isn't like super precious and perfect.
That's right.
And then it sounds more conversational, more whatever the word is, allegorical, suddenly there's something. How does any of that sort of play into writing?
Yeah, sometimes I think, you see, I'll see down the line certain songs that I will have written with an artist, and they'll be talking about it in some interview or whatever, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, they're talking about the day that we wrote it, and like we went to lunch and we were laughing about that, whatever, that waiter that spilled the thing, and and it becomes a little bit of a story, and it's a good reminder that like those, like having a fun time is like half the thing, and it also kind of cements that in their memory, and it kind of makes it a positive experience for them. Whereas like, I can tend to be a little bit workmanlike in my approach. I have 2 kids and a relatively normal like schedule. I'm not in the studio like all night and doing that anymore like I used to. So I can tend to be like, all right, let's like problem solve this. Let's figure out what this is. But then sometimes you gotta relax and be like, let's like take a walk, or let's go. And if someone wanted to go into this random, crystal store because they want to look at some healing crystals, it's like, yeah, let's do that.
There's a story there somewhere.
Yeah. You gotta be open to the detours,
right?
Because I think that like the song breakthroughs can be there, and you need that distraction, to your point, to take your minds off the pressure of like, we got to do this, we got to write a hit today that's gonna set in motion this set of events that is gonna make us all millions.
I think I've said this millions of times, and probably when we were working together on that album was the Dave Jordan quote, where he says, he told me this in like '98 when he was producing my band. He said, sometimes you've got to like completely rewrite the song, change the key, change the tempo, change the lyric, change the melody, change everything. And other times you just got to get out of the way of the artist and help them make it happen.
Yeah, totally.
And it's the skill set is understanding what set of...
Right. It's like take control, chop it up. Here's how it needs to go. I've got it. Let me show you. And then sometimes it's like, that's great, and that sounds super honest to you. And then here's the way that I would elevate that idea.
Yeah, the support or the rip it apart and everything in between.
That's right. Yeah.
So my other thing, the other thing I often talk about is like the extreme. I definitely feel to be ultra pop, and what I mean by that is to fulfill every obvious thing. Like it's going to be F sharp minor D A E number one, or just be different, A E F sharp minor D.
Wild,
flip it around. Let's do 1 5 6 4 rather than 6 4 1 5. We know these things work, and you know that if you and I did that and we sung off a major third in the beginning of the melody, we could probably come up with something quite hooky and whatever. And we also know, and I know you are an accomplished musician, that you could probably sit there and write a 7-minute 7/4 art piece.
Yeah, right.
And the thing is when those two things just meet.
Yes.
The sort of like you get the credibility, the cool, like all of that stuff, and all the pop.
Yes.
Getting those two things to meet.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, when those have met and you've had the hits, is there anything you feel you can point to and go, it may be different for each one, but something that's special that makes those two things meet? Because the real hits, the real massive hits, not just whatever, always seem to have, oh yeah, that lyric spoke to lots of people.
Yeah.
This thing, this...
I try and I think about that all the time. I was like, man, if I could really distill the experience and like, you know, you'd at least know, maybe you couldn't manufacture it every time, but you at least know it was happening, you know?
Right.
And it's hard to pin down because they've all come together in so many different ways. I would say that generally the through line is, and this is not technical, but like when we're having fun, I would say that they're not all hits, but all the hits are usually, there was some fun being had. Or somebody was kind of, we were just like laughing about stuff. And I think it finds its way into the music or the lyric or certainly with like writing, not
taking yourself too seriously.
Not taking yourself too seriously.
Because I think for rock musicians, sorry to interrupt, but for rock musicians, there's this tendency, and this is the great discussion point, because there's this tendency that you want to be, everybody wants to be Bob Dylan 1965, 66. Yeah. I mean, he looked freaking cool. He was young. He was writing these beautiful, incredible songs that changed the world.
Yeah.
However, it was like Just Like a Woman and It Ain't Me, Babe, which are two like massive pop songs.
Right.
It Ain't Me, Babe. No. You can sing along. Everybody knows the song.
Right.
And then there's a big complaint with rock at the moment. Like, we can't get on the radio. It's like, well, can't you write those songs again? Can't you write, and I always use this analogy for everybody watching me, can't you write something off like Queen the Game, where it's Another One Bites the Dust, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, Save Me, Play the Game. I mean,
which are rock, but insanely hooky and yeah, totally. That's I wouldn't be the expert on.
Have you been put into rooms with rock bands?
I mean, I've done a handful of stuff with 5 Seconds of Summer, who I know are a real pop act, but they're a legit band. Like those guys all play, and they really play live, and like they're like really good guitar players, and that's again, the
drummer's really good.
Yeah,
and he's kind of the boss of the band, isn't he?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Well, I mean, I work with them in different combinations. So sometimes it'll be Callum and Luke, and sometimes it'll be like the other. Anyway,
I only work with them as a band. So.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
But it is when you work with a band and it reminds you of band dynamics, and I mean, those guys all seem to get on great. But you go, oh yeah, right, I forgot. This guy's working from this angle. This guy's working from that angle. You have to like take me back to my band days and remember that people need to be appeased and listened to. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of country, which is obviously its own thing, and some singer-songwriter stuff. Wrote a couple on Matt Nathanson's last album, which was really fun. I don't know if there has been much like proper rock.
Right, but Matt and Gavin DeGraw you mentioned earlier, they're certainly not like rock, but
they're proper, like you're sitting down tracking live instruments and actually, this is again not rock, but speaking of real instruments, which you wouldn't think you would need to make that as a subcategory of a music conversation, except it often is for me. I did a few songs on Manny Moore's new album, which is really fun because she's super lovely, and Mike Viola is producing it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Mike?
I know of him. I can't remember if we've met or not.
Yeah, he's great. And so I wrote these songs, and then they were like, "Hey, come play on them." And we're doing it, and they're doing everything live to tape. And it's been years. I mean, even on our album, we maybe tracked drums and bass, and maybe kept a guitar part or something. Which was still way more than I would ever do in a normal recording session now. But we're just in a room, cans on. It was so fun for me to be able to, it's kind of nerve-wracking, but you do 4 takes, go into the room, listen to playback, pick 1 take, that's it. It's fun. It was great.
It was great to see she's making records like that. But she had a wonderful voice. I actually played on a song of hers, like early 2000s, that was produced by Fernando.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't even remember what the song was. I just played funk guitar on it.
Oh, nice. She's lovely and it has a great voice. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you ever so much.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you. It's a great excuse to hang.
I know, right?
And to meet Moses.
Let's just do it every week so we can hang.
Okay. So thanks, everybody. That was a really good inside look into, writing, especially, I know you're traveling to Nashville quite a lot to write as well, but the fact that you're so rooted in LA here is interesting to get a little bit of insight in it. So thanks ever so much.
Thanks.
Please leave any comments and questions below. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and we'll see you all again, and songwriting, and we'll see you all again very soon.